this travel documentary, I will start with Cancun, which is a tropical paradise and a heaven for spring breakers. I will have you enjoy Pirate Night, Cenote Dos Ojos, Museum of Ice Age, and Xcaret Park. From there, I will take you to Tulum, Chichen Itza, and Coba. These places are the sites of pre-Columbian Maya, who ruled Yucatan until 400 years ago. Enjoy! Cancun is a tropical destination. It is the closest destination from the United States. I rented a penthouse at 19 km in Zona Hotelera. I had a great view of the beach and the Gulf of Mexico. I could watch both the sunrise and the sunset. I was glad that I was far away from the madness. The wind was very strong from up here, and I could see the sky full of stars during the night. I even slept in the veranda one night. A long stretch of beach goes from the city and is measured in kilometers. I was 19 kilometers away from the city center. Last time I went there during 1980s, when Cancun used to be a sleeping village. Nowadays, it is more like a heavily touristy place with lots of shopping malls and big hotels. Cancun has also become a soaked haven for spring breakers. I recall going to any beach, and while snorkeling, I used to find coral reefs all over. Unfortunately, tourism has taken its toll, and almost all the coral reef is gone. I got sad to see a great place disappear. Yet, there are plenty of gorgeous, drama-free family resorts that cater to folks who want to experience the tropical Yucatan climate. There are significant Mayan ruins here, since the city itself is a party heaven and more suited for a younger crowd. I did not spend much time exploring the city. It has 3 casinos. I spent most of my spare time in their best casino, Casino Palace, because it was the only casino that offered card games. Dubai Palace started offering the card games first time while I was there. I went there to check it out, but got very disappointed the way they offered the games. I was in and out within 1 hour. The city has lots of great restaurants as usual, which offer a variety of food suitable for everyone's need. In any good restaurant that I went to, I found the food pricey and the service impeccable. But I was paying for a great experience as well. I recommend eating outside your resort. One day, going around the city was enough for sightseeing, and it was time to drive out of the city, which offers lots more. That evening, I drove 30 miles south to Puerto Morelos for a peaceful walk and dinner. This peaceful village on the Mayan Riviera is a place to experience the genuine Yucatan. After lots of destruction to the nature in Yucatan, government eco-reserve designations finally decided to protect the reef and mangroves, and the village itself from development. This is the place to come and relax, watch the sunrise on the beach, meet the locals, explore the natural wonders such as the coral reef 500 meters from shore, work on your tan, or simply soak up the serenity. Wedged between the bustling cities of Cancun and Playa del Carmen, it has maintained its peaceful atmosphere of a charming Mexican village, living up to its nickname, La Joya del Caribe, or Jewel of Caribbean. The community, a mix of locals and foreigners, work hard to protect Porto's status as a national marine park and keep development to a minimum. Outdoor options include diving, bike rides, moped explorations, or charter fishing. Anyone who ever went to Cancun, I always recommend the Noche de Pirate or Pirate Night. It is a tour on a pirate boat which starts at 6 p.m. and ends at around midnight. I took Jolly Rogers, which is a replica of the Santa Maria galleon. Their show started even before they took off. Once they sailed off, they showed a spectacular battle between pirates of the Caribbean Sea of the Riviera Maya. Clashing of swords, amazing acrobatics, exploding cannons, amazing fireworks, and interactive comedy show made the guests a part of real-life pirate adventure. The show started with delightful greetings from one of the pirates. The pirates were really involved in their roles and provided us with unique experience, great improvisation, great jokes, and cool activities on board. They made small groups and a personal pirate got assigned to each group. That pirate kept the group refreshed with drinks all the time and was always making sure that everything was okay. The last part of the show was also great, with fireworks, flying pirates, and swords everywhere. People from all around the world were immersed with pirates' jokes and activities. All of the pirates were extremely good and stayed in character constantly. These guys really knew how to work the crowd. We had plenty of opportunities to get pictures with the pirates. The organization was amazing and it was well noticed when the dinner time arrived. Their delicious gourmet dinner buffet was superb. They even offered a pirate kids menu. The show was fun and I highly recommend it. As they say, ahoy! Dos Ojos is a flooded cave system located south of Playa del Carmen and north of Tulum on the Caribbean coast in the state of Quintana Roo, Mexico. The entrance to Dos Ojos is 1 mile south of Xcaret, 10 miles north of Tulum on Highway 307. The Cenote entrance is 2 miles off the main road. The exploration of Dos Ojos began in 1986 and has never stopped since. The documented underwater extent of the cave system is at least 37 miles. Dos Ojos lays broadly parallel to and north of the Cancun cave system. Dos Ojos has remained in the top 10, if not the top 3, longest underwater cave systems in the world. Here they offer scuba diving or snorkeling guided tours. I chose to take 45 minutes of snorkeling guided tour. First, they made us spend time in a holding area to get used to the water temperature and snorkeling. There were fish around us, and that added to fun. Water temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year, and the maximum depth near the Dos Ojos cenotes is approximately 33 feet. The water is exceptionally clear as a result of rainwater filtered through limestone, and there being very little soil development in this region since the limestone is very pure. Cenotes are formed by dissolution of rock and the resulting subsurface void, which may or may not be linked to an active cave system, and the subsequent structural collapse of the rock ceiling above the void. Rock that falls into the water below is slowly removed by further dissolution, creating space for more collapsed blocks. The rate of collapse increases during periods when the water table is below the ceiling of the void. Since the rock ceiling is no longer buoyantly supported by the water in the void, cenotes may be fully collapsed, creating an open water pool, or partially collapsed with some portion of rock overhanging above the water. The stereotypical cenotes often resemble small circular ponds, measuring some tens of meters in diameter with sheer drops at the edges. Most cenotes, however, require some degree of stooping or crawling to access the water. These caves and underground rivers were created naturally over 6,500 years ago. A combination of geologic events and climatic change has led to the development of these unique ecosystems. Millions of years ago, the Yucatan Peninsula was a giant reef set under several feet of ocean water. During the last ice age, the ocean level dropped. Water levels were approximately 300 feet lower than their present-day levels, exposing the reef to the surface. The coral died and the jungle grew over the mile-thick limestone platform created by the coral reef. Fossils found far inland are proof of this and are commonly seen during cenote dive. Over the past 20 years, experienced scuba divers have explored these caves, discovering more than 300 miles of interconnected passageways and caves that make up this amazing one-of-a-kind ecosystem. These cenotes, only found in this part of the world, offer certified divers the opportunity to explore something different. Here I was, discovering the tranquil beauty of these pristine windows to the underwater world, and was experiencing going through caverns full of crystal clear water, stalagmites and stalactites. The name Dos Ojos is Spanish for two eyes and refers to two neighboring cenotes which connect into a very large cavern zone shared between the two. These two cenotes appear like two large eyes into the underground. Some of the underwater caves were featured in an IMAX film in 2002, Journey into Amazing Caves. Parts of the Hollywood 2006 movie The Cave were filmed in Dos Ojos cave system. However, this movie really sucked. Then they took us through other tunnels and caves. At times it was completely dark and kind of scary. A wide array of blue colors was shimmering with tiny ripples of sun mixed with the flashlights that they provided us with. These flooded caves, sometimes with only rock above our head and in darkness, were extremely beautiful, and it was an incredible experience. It's hard to describe how awesome it is to snorkel through something like this. There were medium-sized free-tailed bats all over, but we were told that they do not bite. It was so amazing to see these bats that live here, hanging in the stalactites and flying around with joy without paying any attention to us. Yes, it's a bit expensive, but the diving or snorkeling here is really very good and not scary at all. Going back to the formation of these massive cave systems, they were formed by gradual dissolving of the highly porous coral limestone. These caves are called solution caves because they were formed by the slightly acidic rainfall dissolving the alkaline limestone. Inside the caves, the geological formations such as stalactites, which hang like icicles from the cave's ceiling, and stalagmites, which extend upwards from the cavern floor, which often join to create columns, are a spectacular sight to see. These stalactites and stalagmites are numbered in the millions and range in size from that of a pencil to the size of a big tree. Many of the caverns eventually collapsed, and when the Ice Age came to a close 18,000 years ago, the climate of the planet warmed up. The glaciers receded and the caves flooded as sea levels rose. Scientists have varying views on how fast water levels rose, but most agree that the water reached its current level around 1,000 years ago. Carbon dating of artifacts found in some cave areas show them to have been visited by humans over 9,000 years ago. Here are a few words of caution. If you think you are claustrophobic, do not enter these cenotes. Even if you are not, you may react in unexpected ways and experience anxiety. Some parts in the cenotes are very dark, and the darkness alters the sense of orientation. This can make you feel like you could get lost easily. While this is all a matter of perception, and as long as you have a good guide, follow the guidelines, and are in good health, you will be fine. It is amazing, well worth it, and can be a lifetime adventure. When you visit the cenotes, please consider yourself a guest and act accordingly. We must show respect and be careful while diving or snorkeling underwater and walking around on the land's surface, particularly near a dive site. The fragile biological life, formations, and archaeological history are there for the diver's interpretation and enjoyment. Divers should leave the cenotes the exact way they find it. That's why take only memories, kill only time, and leave nothing behind but bubbles. In the end, I must say that if you have to visit one cenote during your Cancun trip, go to this one. At Dos Ojos, they told me to visit their prehistoric museum. It was hard to find, even though it was right there at the entrance. This is known as the Prehistory Museum or Museum of Ice Age. Jacinto Pat holds several of the most popular cenotes in the region, including this museum. During their project, they have studied 8 human skeletons from the flooded caves, some of which were 80% and all dating at least 9,000 years old. One of them, the woman from Naharun Cave, is the oldest human skeleton of the American continent, which is estimated to be about 13,660 years old. The woman of Las Palmas has one of the most complete skulls discovered to date. The skeleton was scanned and a full resin computerized duplicate was made. From the replica, a full-size live wax model was created. So we actually see the face and body of one of the first American inhabitants. Since 1999, they have developed an underwater archaeological project focused on understanding where did the first group of humans in Americas come from. When did they come to Yucatan Peninsula? How did they look like? How did they survive? How did the ecosystem evolve during the Ice Age? Caves and cenotes of Yucatan Peninsula contain vital information to these and other questions. Thanks to the efforts and selfless participation of cave divers and explorers in the caves of Yucatan and Quintana Roo, remains of horses, camels, mastodons, sloths, giant armadillos, elephants, and much more, all disappeared at the time of the end of Ice Age, have been discovered. What we know now as a jungle 10,000 years ago was in fact a desert landscape. These findings suggest that horses and camels lived in Americas long before the Europeans arrived. There is enough evidence that they were eaten by humans. Could this have been the reason they became extinct? The Ice Age refers to the most recent glacial period that started 110,000 years ago, has its maximum influence for about 20,000 years and ended at around 8000 BC. Changes in the ocean levels up to 400 feet, expansion of glaciers, and Great Lakes being frozen, forced species to move through corridors that has not been available before. After surviving for millions of years for at least 80 species of mammals, the Ice Age resulted in extinction. We are at the beginning of a new climate change era with a super-consuming species that is dominating the land. Who will be next to go extinct? Xcaret Eco-Archaeological Park is located 40 miles south of Cancun. I was told that I must enjoy this unforgettable experience, and that is the reason I ended up there. All the trails are marked in colors and directional signs are posted on each turn. Flamingos are exotic birds that stand out for their bright pink colors, curved beaks, long legs, and pronounced necks. Definitely one of the most charismatic species in Xcaret. Southeastern Mexico is one of their main nesting areas. Therefore, a large number of them enjoy paradise in Xcaret. I found them in most of the park, at the entrance, just off the rivers and beaches. Additionally, they carry out a program for the conservation of this beautiful species, which consists in the rescue of eggs and hatchlings and a breeding program in the park facilities. They also have several other animals, including jaguars, that one can watch along the way. It was a very hot and humid day, and I decided to swim and enjoy the rivers of Xcaret. I swam for an hour that took me through caves, waterfalls, and underground river channels. These underground rivers are part of a natural network of channels which circulate under the Yucatan Peninsula. This activity is for the whole family and has the comfort of a life jacket and a snorkel, with which you can float gently and clearly observe ancient Mayan cenotes, rock formations, and marine fossils. These underground rivers are composed of a labyrinth of caves and tunnels that are illuminated by natural light entries and extend for about half a mile, with a depth of 5 to 6 feet. For those looking for a meditation space where they can be fully integrated with nature, the tropical jungle trail at Xcaret is the ideal place. Here, one can embark on an enchanting journey through the refuge of an impressive diversity of trees and native plants of Yucatan. The trails take you through informative panels of each species on the path. Some of these regional plants are latex, henequen, coconut sweets, cinnamon, vanilla, and innatto spice, among others. In addition, their plant conservation program protects more than 70,000 plants distributed throughout the park. One trail led me to the Mexican cemetery, where ancestors are remembered with respect, but also with hints of humor and the typical Mexican mischief. Step into the bridge to paradise. There are multiple passages and entrances to the cemetery. Here, one can explore a spiral architecture that reveals a large number of tombs and expressive personalities. This is a place of great value to the Mexican culture and its relationship with the traditional Day of the Dead. This unique architectural work has a special significance that simulates a hill with 7 levels, referring to the days of the week. On the outside, you can find 365 graves that symbolize each day of the year. And finally, the main entrance is a staircase with 52 steps representing the weeks. Additionally, its spiral shape refers to a conch shell, as used in ancient times to communicate with gods through their breath, the wind. Xcaret, which in Maya means small inlet, was originally called Papole and was an important Mayan archaeological site dedicated to maritime trade. This ceremonial center was a shipping port to the other communities along the coast, and its inlet served as a starting point for Mayan oarsmen that rode to the island of Cozumel to worship the goddess of the moon, Ixchel. Xcaret rose to the height of its power in the late Classic period, 1400 to 1517 AD, and is comprised of 4 groups of structures that may be located along its territory. Turn your visit to Xcaret into an archaeological adventure and discover, one by one, the different pyramids that are hidden in the natural scenery of the park. Get to know the legacy of the Mayan culture in Xcaret and enjoy the experience of a land considered paradise on earth by the ancient Maya. There are several natural pools in the park. They are the best place to enjoy the turquoise Caribbean Sea, tide movement, and the warm sun. Here, one can watch how the waves naturally fill and recycle the water of these natural jacuzzi. Not only are they great for a refreshing swim, but are also perfect for relaxing while listening to the sea flowing between the rocks. There are several optional tours available at the park, and I took a few. I took scuba snorkeling trip. The innovative breathing system allows one to have freedom of snorkel combined with diving technology. I enjoyed exploring the seabed with scuba and stayed underwater to become a true explorer of the depths. This is simple and easy to use equipment. We got to stay underwater in the crystal waters of the Caribbean, while surrounded by fish and even a few friendly stingrays that seem to fly underwater. This park is definitely a unique natural sanctuary in Mexico. I also took a walk underwater while breathing with a SeaTrack helmet and met the majestic stingrays that inhabit the waters of the park. This innovative activity allows one to breathe comfortably at a depth of 12 feet, while expert instructors teach the natural habitat of the stingrays and tropical fish in a real underwater paradise. Unfortunately, in panic, I could not turn my GoPro camera during this activity. I highly recommend this activity, but only if you don't have eardrum or heart problem. The water will really pressurize you at this depth. Meet the majestic stingrays that inhabit the waters of the park. In this park, one can explore the colorful coral reefs by visiting the aquarium and discover the natural treasures of the Caribbean Sea. This is a unique aquarium as they have successfully established over 500 coral reef structures with a seawater pump, allowing a free flow of plankton directly into the exhibit tanks, along with sponge larvae, corals and mollusks that originate a natural colonization process. This was my first time to visit a real natural aquarium. This aquarium exhibits the biodiversity of the Caribbean that includes more than 5,000 marine organisms. It is a huge family theme park with several trails that take visitors to more than 40 exciting attractions through the simulated Mayan jungle and the culture of Mexico. When night falls, you will be their guest of honor at the presentation Xcaret Mexico Spectacular, a celebration of light and color with 300 artists that will take you through the history of Mexico. I was in the park for 8 hours and was able to enjoy only half of the activities that the park has to offer. The sun, heat, and humidity made me very tired, and I decided to leave the park abruptly. If you'll be visiting the Cancun or Playa del Carmen area and are less inclined to be adventurous, I highly recommend this park. If you do come, bring some comfortable walking shoes, map out your day, and prepare for an unforgettable experience. Tulum is the site of a pre-Columbian Maya walled city serving as a major port of Coba, located just 80 miles south of Cancun. Like any other Mayan city, one would find people around here as well, dressed as Mayans, for a small donation, more than willing to be photographed with visitors. After entering the ruins through one of 5 doorways in the wall, visitors are greeted by a field of gently rolling hills. Black and grey stone outcroppings, which were once buildings, dot the sun-baked landscape. In the Yucatec language, Tulum means wall, referring to the large barricade that surrounds the settlement. In the Mayan language, Tulum was called Zama, meaning dawn, an appropriate name given its eastern location. Each Mayan city had a specific purpose, and Tulum was no exception. It was a seaport trading mainly in turquoise and jade. Tulum site is one of the very few walled cities built by the Maya. These walls are located on only 3 sides of the settlement, as the ocean protects the eastern borders. It used to have an estimated population of 1,000 to 1,600 inhabitants. The ruins are situated on 39 feet tall cliffs. The Tulum archaeological site is relatively compact compared with many other Maya sites in the vicinity. and is one of the best preserved coastal Maya sites. Made of limestone, the wall was about 26 feet thick and 1,300 feet long on the side parallel to the sea. The part of wall that ran the width of the site was slightly shorter and only about 560 feet on both sides. Constructing this massive wall would have taken an enormous amount of energy and time, which shows how important defense was to the Maya when they chose this site to preserve the seaport. On the southwest and northwest corners, there are small structures that have been identified as watchtowers, showing again how well defended the city was. Near the northern side of the wall, a small cenote provided the city with fresh water. Tulum had access to both land and sea trade routes, making it an important trade hub, especially for obsidian. From numerous depictions in murals and other works around the site, Tulum appears to have been an important site for the worship of the diving or descending god. Most prominent among the remaining structures is the castillo or castle, which is perched on the edge of a 40-feet limestone cliff overlooking the Caribbean coast. The 25 feet tall castillo was built on a previous building that was colonnaded and had a beam and mortar roof. The lintels in the upper rooms have serpent motifs carved into them. The construction of the castillo appears to have taken place in stages. A small shrine appears to have been used as a beacon for incoming canoes. This shrine marks a break in the barrier reef that is opposite the site. In front of the castillo is the Temple of the Frescoes, one of the better preserved buildings. Peer inside the temple to see a mural painted in 3 sections. The first level represents the Mayan world of the dead, the middle is that of the living, and the final, highest piece is of the creator and rain gods. The temple was used as an observatory for tracking the movement of the sun. Niche figurines of the Maya diving god or Venus deity decorate the facade of the temple. This diving god is also depicted in the temple of the diving god in the central precinct of the site. Above the entrance in the western wall, a stucco figure of the diving god is still preserved, giving the temple its name. A mural can still be seen on the eastern wall that resembles that of a style that originated in highland Mexico, called the Mixteca Puebla style. Interesting to note, in the middle of the living section is a god astride a 4-legged animal believed to be a horse. If in fact this is a horse, it would mean Mayans still occupied Tulum in 1518 when they would have seen the animals for the first time with the arrivals of the Spanish. Chiseled above the doorway of the temple is a figure with what appears to be birds' wings and a tail. This diving god is believed to represent a Mayan deity who protected the people and is particularly well preserved on various buildings around the site. Through these investigations, it has been determined that Tulum was occupied during the late post-classic period around 1200 AD. The site continued to be occupied until contact with the Spanish was made in the early 16th century. By the end of the 16th century, the site was abandoned completely. This type of architecture resembles what can be found in nearby Chichen Itza, just on a much smaller scale. Both coastal and land routes converged at Tulum, which is apparent by the number of artifacts found in or near the site that show contacts with areas all over central Mexico and Central America. Copper artifacts from the Mexican highlands have been found near the site, as have flints artifacts, ceramics, incense burners, and gold objects from all over Yucatan. Salt and textiles were among some of the goods brought to Tulum by sea that would then be dispersed inland. Typical exported goods included feathers and copper objects that came from inland sources. These goods could be transported by sea to rivers such as the Rio Motagua and the Rio Usumacinta system that could be taken inland, giving seafaring canoes access to both the highlands and the lowlands. One of the best preserved coastal Maya sites, Tulum is today a popular site for tourists. Piecing together what Tulum was like a millennium ago is exciting, but it can also be a humid venture. That's why it's a good idea to take something cold to drink, a hat and a bathing suit. In 1995, tourism came to a brief halt as the powerful Hurricane Roxanne pounded into Tulum, packing 115 miles per hour winds. Damage was moderate. Located midway between Mérida and Cancun, Chichen Itza is the northmost of the major archaeological sites in Yucatan. Many tourists visit Chichen Itza as a day trip, especially from Cancun, more than 100 miles away. This archaeological site is also an hour and a half away from Mérida, the capital of Yucatan. I decided to leave very early in the morning to beat the crowd. Yet it took me about 2 hours to arrive there. The police here is very corrupt and would try anything to get donation from the tourists. The tourists can easily be recognized by their rental cars. As one enters the site and walks for a while, the first things that would be noticed would be the pyramid of Kukulkan or El Castillo. This is the most famous landmark of Chichen Itza. This was a temple pyramid dedicated to the feathered serpent god Kukulkan. It is nicknamed the Castle. Sculptures of the feathered serpents run down the sides of the northern staircase and are set off by shadows from the corner tiers on the spring and fall equinox. The Maya would often build newer, bigger temple pyramids atop older ones. Archaeologists have constructed tunnels allowing a view of the earlier temple of Kukulkan inside the later one. During my last visit during 1980s, tourists could climb on any of the pyramids and could enter inside any monument around this region. Back then, I climbed this pyramid and the outlook was amazing. Unfortunately, as of January 2006, a visitor can no longer climb any pyramid, including El Castillo. These areas have been roped off due to erosion and destruction of some of the sacred monuments. Around here, there were lots of iguanas roaming around freely. As I was admiring the site, this iguana took my attention away briefly and then ran away. Chichen Itza was a center of pilgrimage for the ancient Maya for over 1,000 years. Covering more than 300 acres, it is also one of the largest and the richest in the monuments. Above all, it is one of the most significant in historical terms because it illustrates two major periods in pre-Hispanic civilization in the Mesoamerican zone. Chichen Itza is the most important archaeological vestige of the Maya Toltec civilization in Yucatan. Surrounding El Castillo are terraces where the major monumental complexes were built. On the northwest are the group of 1,000 columns. The town was established close to two natural cavities, or as they call it, cenotes, which facilitated tapping the underground water area of the Cenote of Xtolok during the Classic period. The dates for this settlement vary according to subsequent local accounts. One manuscript gives 415 to 435 AD, while others say 455 AD. These are the platform of Venus and round. In the center of the platform of Venus, there is a relief of serpent Birdman, which is considered to be the representation of the morning star. Towards the stairways, one can observe matting, which symbolize power, and in the corner can be seen what has been interpreted as the nodding of the ears alongside the planet Venus. The platform was originally painted in green, red, blue, and black. An offering consisting of a skull of a decapitated man was found in the eastern stairway. The round platform, one of the few buildings so shaped in Chichen Itza, held a container with offerings and a small stone-paved area. The function of these buildings was probably as podiums for ceremonies, rites, or dances. The importance of this structure, which has 4 stairways with balustrades adorned with intertwined serpents, resides in the fact that it was built over a deep cavern. It did not originally serve as a funeral site, but as a place of worship. It is the central element in a ceremonial complex composed of a temple, a platform, a road, and the Xtolok cenote. The complex was possibly the public manifestation of a dynasty or another social subdivision of the lords of Chichen Itza. The temple and upper platforms superimposed on the base were covered with stucco and polychrome mythological reliefs. It has been proven that it was used until the last post-classic period, albeit with certain changes in function. This is the stone that used to mask the southeast corner. It was once located at the top of the ossuary. There were a total of 16 of these stone masks, 4 at each corner. They may represent rain gods, Chak, Kululkan, or Itzamna. This is Casa de los Metates, or the House of the Grinding Stones. These form a series of chambers with large interconnecting partitions, which served as a residence for people of families related to the upkeep and ceremonial use of the ossuary complex. The abundant earthenware and numerous fragments of grinding stone found indicate that the complex had a domestic use or was linked to the great public festivals, which included food preparation. At the same time, the Atlantean columns and the substantial architecture indicate that the complex was inhabited by people of higher social class. This is El Caracol, or the observatory. This structure is known as the observatory due to the shape and some possible astral associations, since astronomical events concerning the planet Venus and the setting of the sun during the equinoxes have been related to 3 windows in the upper sections. The name Caracol or Conch comes from the spiral stairs that lead to the upper part of the building. It is believed that its construction dates from an intermediary period between the terminal classic and the early post-classic periods. This is Casa del Venado, or the House of the Deer. It appears that the name of this semi-collapsed building comes from some small fragments of a painting containing the figure of a deer on the posterior wall of the western chamber, which have since been destroyed. The building rises from a rectangular pedestal and is comprised of 3 aligned chambers with a small altar to the front. The facade is simple with an undecorated roof comb, of which only a part remains. The building probably had a religious or civic function. It dates from the terminal classic period. The second settlement of Chichen Itza, and the most important for historians, corresponded to the migration of Toltec warriors from the Mexican plateau towards the south during the 10th century. According to the most common version, the king of Tula, Ciacatl Topelzin Coetzalcoatl, or Kukulcan, as the Mayans translated the name, reportedly took the city between 967 and 987 AD after wandering for many years. What is known for certain is that the Toltec invaders subjugated the local population with a ferocity which even 5 centuries later the chronicles of the sacred books of the Mayans spoke of. The Toltecs imposed the ritual of human sacrifice, which until then was rarely, if at all, practiced in the region. Following the conquest of Yucatan, a new style blending the Mayan and Toltec traditions developed, symbolizing the phenomena of acculturation. Chichen Itza is a clear illustration of this fusion. Specific examples are in the group of buildings to the south. The Caracol, a circular stellar observatory whose spiral staircase accounts for its name, and to the north, the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, El Castillo. Other examples of the Mexican influence are the famous statues of the rain god Chacmul, executed in a typical half-reclining pose. This is La Iglesia, or the church. This small building with only one chamber owes its name to its proximity to the so-called convent at the nunnery and to the exuberant decoration on its upper facade, which rises even higher due to its lofty roof comb. One can observe large areas covered with the original stucco on the Grecian frets of the central panel. Big Nose's mask constitute the main element of the facade, with a seated figure, god or ancestor, integrated upon the nose of the central mask. There also are figures of the 4 carriers of the corners of the sky. This is Templo de los Tableros Esculpidos. The name of this building comes from the reliefs carved on the north and south walls of the colonnade, depicting scenes of numerous people, plants and animals, both real and imaginary, which are dominated by 2 warriors. The building is made up of a temple erected on a slab foundation with a colonnade in front of it. The offering discovered during explorations are evident of the celebration of fire-related rituals. This is El Osario o Tumba del Gran Sacerdote. The importance of this structure, which has 4 stairways with balustrades adorned with intertwined serpents, resides in the fact that it was built over a deep cavern. It did not originally serve as a funeral site, but as a place of worship. It is the central element in a ceremonial complex. Composed of a temple, a platform, a road, and the Xtolok cenote, the complex was possibly the public manifestation of a dynasty of other social subdivision of the lords of Chichen Itza. The temple and the upper platforms pre-imposed on the base were covered with stucco and polychrome mythological reliefs. It has been proven that it was used until the last post-classic period, albeit with certain changes in function. More buildings were built during the rule of Toltec people, and they were in a mixture of Maya and Toltec styles. In about 1221 AD, the Maya revolted against the rulers of Chichen Itza. The city was not abandoned, but as political power shifted elsewhere, it declined and no major new buildings were constructed. Chichen Itza remained a place of pilgrimage for the Maya until it was conquered by the Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century. The structures of Chichen Itza were overgrown with jungle and slowly decayed until major archaeological projects began in the 1920s. Since then, more of the ancient structures have been cleared and restored, and more tourists come to visit. This is Templo del Xtolok and is located beside Xtolok Cenote, which is the second largest cenote or sinkhole in the center of Chichen Itza, and from which it receives its name. On the pillars of the temple, there are sculptured personages representing warriors and priests. There is an altar in the interior of the third chamber, originally decorated with bas-reliefs of plants, birds, and mythological scenes. In front of it and beneath the floor, a container of offerings with human remains was found. This is the nunnery complex, which is complemented by two patios with puuk-style buildings, probably inhabited by nobility or members of a high social class. The upper facade of the east patio is notable for its latticework and sculpted masks of gods with prominent noses. The eastern facade of the nunnery has decorative elements in the Chinese style. There is a long inscription above the door. On the small southwest patio, there is a structure with a warrior relief on the extended back wall of a long bench. This is the Columnata Norte, or northern colonnade. This building completely encloses the northern side of the plaza and originally had a roof upheld by columns and pillars with reliefs of warriors on the front. In the interiors, one can observe a stone bench running along the length of the entire building and an altar with sculpted personages undertaking a ceremony with incense offering. It has 4 axes, 2 in front which communicate with the plaza and the 2 side ones which link up with the Temple of the Warriors and the northeastern colonnade. The pedestal is decorated with reliefs of eagles and jaguars devouring hearts. These are the Columnata de la Esquina Noreste, or northeast colonnade. The southern axis and the juncture with other elevated columns to the north indicate that the colonnade was used to isolate events that occurred in the plaza. At least 2 construction stages are evident in this sequence of buildings. This is Al Marcadi, or the market. This is one of the best examples of the gallery and courtyard type found at the site. Here, Mayan architects made significant construction advances, as in making wider vaulting and taller columns, although its original use cannot be properly identified. It is obvious that it was closely related to the plaza in front, to which it was connected by a large stairway. It has a long frontal gallery with 3 accesses towards the plaza and 1 to the interior of the sunken courtyard. Near this axis, there is an altar with relief representations of personages. Surrounding the courtyard are very tall columns which supported the roof, made of perishable materials and which sloped towards the sunken courtyard and which was drained by a cut stone canal. This is Templo de las Pequeñas Mesas, or Temple of the Small Tables. This building has a similar distribution as the Temple of the Warriors. It has a central stairway which connects to the 2 upper rooms, which had vaulted roofs held up by pillars sculptured with representations of warriors. To the front, there is a sculpture of a chakmul reclining in between 2 serpent-shaped columns. It was excavated towards the end of the 19th century. When part of the rubble was removed from the rooms, a horizontal altar held up by altaces was found, thus giving the building its name. This is Columnata Sureste, or Southeastern Colonnade. Originally, this colonnade was a large space covered with a vaulted rood, which rested upon a long row of columns. This building, which encloses the southeastern angle of the plaza, clearly shadows the modifications it underwent due to the construction of multiple inner walls. It is not clear whether these walls were necessary to offset the instability of the building or were related to changes in the use of the original spaces. It has accesses to the steam bath courtyard and others towards the plaza of the 1,000 columns. This is Columnata Oeste, or Western Colonnade. This is the largest colonnaded building known on the site. There is some evidence in its southeastern extreme that it originally had a vaulted roof, which was preserved due to the fact that the rooms were filled with rubble for the construction of another building on top, which, needless to say, was never completed. The main facade faces the plaza of the castle, and a central corridor connects it with the Plaza of the Thousand Columns. Its original use probably was to accommodate large gatherings during meetings, festivities, and markets. This is Templo de los Guerreros, which was erected over an ancient structure known as the Temple of Chacmul. This is Templo de las Grandes Mesas, or the Temple of the Large Tables. This is a small pyramid formed by four-tiered foundation with a building on top where there are some rectangular altars supported by small atlases, from whence comes the name of the structure. The access steps lie to the west, the principal slide. There are representations of warriors on the door jambs as well as on the temple pillars. On the upper parts of the outside walls, there are friezes with plumed serpents and jaguars. This construction covers an earlier one, rich in decoration with serpents on the vaulting and warriors on the pillars. Shortly after the first expeditions of Spaniards to the region, Spanish initiated a number of attempts to subjugate the Maya, who were hostile towards the Spanish crown, and established a colonial presence in the Maya territories of the Yucatan Peninsula and the Guatemalan highlands. This campaign, sometimes termed the Spanish conquest of Yucatan, would prove to be a lengthy and dangerous exercise for the conquistadors from the outset, and it would take some 170 years and tens of thousands of Indian auxiliaries before the Spanish established substantive control over all Maya lands. Unlike the Aztec and Inca empires, there was no single Maya political center that, once overthrown, would hasten the end of collective resistance from the indigenous peoples. Instead, the conquistador forces needed to subdue the numerous independent Maya polities almost one by one, many of which kept up a fierce resistance. Most of the conquistadors were motivated by prospects of the great wealth to be had from the seizure of precious metal resources such as gold or silver. However, the Maya lands themselves were poor in these resources. This would become another factor in forestalling Spanish designs of conquest, as they instead were initially attracted to the reports of great riches in central Mexico or Peru. The Spanish church and government officials destroyed Maya texts and with them the knowledge of Maya writing. But by chance, 3 of the pre-Columbian books dated to the post-classic period have been preserved. Some Maya states were continuously occupied and remained independent of the Spanish until late in the 17th century. They were finally subdued by the Spanish in 1697. This is El Gran Juego de Pelota and is the largest ball court in Mesoamerica. It is formed by a long wall on each side with embedded rings or hoops carved with images of plumed serpents. The slightly sloping walls are decorated with scenes of the sacrifice of ball players. At each end of the U-shaped court, there are low walls supporting buildings richly decorated with reliefs and paintings. To the east, the Temple of Jaguars and Shields presents processions of dignitaries and battle scenes that offer a vivid image of Chichen Itza's history. The size of the court and the height of the rings indicate that, in this case, it is not likely that the ball was hit through the ring by the hip alone, although such game rules were generally applicable at the time of the conquest. Overall, a trip to Chichen Itza is not just impressive, but a must. This is one of the places that you must see at least once in your lifetime. Vendors are situated in many areas around the ruins selling statues of Mayan gods, paintings on small pieces of leather, craft, textiles, jewelry, obsidian, and other collectibles. They'll tell you it costs $1 to get your attention, but the price changes when you negotiate. Sun is very strong here, so bring lots of sunscreen and a hat. If not, buy one from here. Be sure to drink lots of bottled water. Those not accustomed to the tropical heat and sun can otherwise risk dehydration. Since I started my trip very early in the morning and was alone visiting Chichen Itza, I decided to drive to Coba. The newly built road was in great shape, had no traffic, and had no police asking for donation. That is why, for a short time period, I decided to push my car to its limits. Coba is a large ruined city of the pre-Columbian Maya civilization, located in the state of Quintana Roo, Mexico. It is located about 90 kilometers east of the Maya site of Chichen Itza, about 40 kilometers west of the Caribbean Sea, and 44 kilometers northwest of the site of Tulum, with which it is connected by a modern road. Due to the size of this park and a 2-mile walk before ending up at the ruins, I was recommended to take a bike or a man-driven tricycle. Due to the camera gear, I chose the latter, and I was glad that I chose that option. Coba is estimated to have had some 50,000 inhabitants and possibly significantly more at its peak of civilization, and the built-up area extends over some 30 square miles. Coba means waters stirred by the winds. An appropriate Mayan name at this settlement is surrounded by 2 large lagoons. A series of elevated stone and plaster roads radiate from the central site to various small sites near and far. These are known by the Maya term sekpe. Some of these causeways go east, and the longest runs over 62 miles westwards to the site of Jasuna. One of such causeway goes all the way to Chichen Itza. While Europe was still in the midst of the Dark Ages, these amazing people had mapped the heavens, evolved the only true writing system native to the Americas, and were masters of mathematics. They invented the calendars we use today. Without metal tools, beasts of burden, or even the wheel, they were able to construct vast cities across a huge jungle landscape with an amazing degree of architectural perfection and variety. Their legacy in stone, which has survived in a spectacular fashion at places such as Palenque, Tikal, Tulum, Chichen Itza, Coba, Copan, and Uxmal, lives on, as do the 7 million descendants of the classic Maya civilization. The Maya are probably the best known of the classic civilizations of Mesoamerica. Originating in the Yucatan around 2600 BC, they rose to prominence around 250 AD. In present-day southern Mexico, Guatemala, northern Belize, and western Honduras, building on the inherited inventions and ideas of earlier civilizations such as the Olmec, the Maya developed astronomy, calendar systems, and hieroglyphic writing. The Maya were noted as well for elaborate and highly decorated ceremonial architecture, including temple pyramids, palaces, and observatories, all built without metal tools. They were also skilled farmers, clearing large sections of tropical rainforest and, where groundwater was scarce, building sizable underground reservoirs for the storage of rainwater. The Maya were equally skilled as weavers and potters, and cleared routes through jungles and swamps to foster extensive trade networks with distant peoples. Around 300 BC, the Maya adopted a hierarchical system of government with rule by nobles and kings. The civilization developed into highly structured kingdoms during the Classic period, 200 to 900 AD. Their society consisted of many independent states, each with a rural farming community and large urban sites built around ceremonial centers. It started to decline around 900 AD when, for reasons which are still largely a mystery, the southern Maya abandoned their cities. When the northern Maya were integrated into the Toltec society by 1200 AD, the Maya dynasty finally came to a close, although some peripheral centers continued to thrive until the Spanish conquest in the early 16th century. This stele is sculpted on all four sides and has 313 hieroglyphs. The group was built upon a large terrace, and its buildings, unlike others in Coba, lack a careful distribution. There were 8 sculptured stelae and numerous other monolithic altars dissociated with them. The large concentration of stelae concentrated here suggests that the group had a very important civic ceremonial use. This is Conjunto Pintoras, or the painting complex. This group of buildings mostly corresponds to the last period of occupation in Coba. This building has a temple on its upper part, whose frieze and lintel were richly painted on their interior side, as well as with the stele. This structure probably had a roof made out of perishable materials, and in front of it are 13 small altars suggesting the ritual characteristics of the complex. 2 other steles are found in their respective sanctuaries at the extremes of the complex. Its architectural style pertains to what is called the East Coast style, which corresponds to the post-classic period of 1100 to 1450 AD. This site contains several large temple pyramids, the tallest in what is known as the Nuhoch Mol group of structures, being some 138 feet in height. 120 steps lead up to the top of the Nuhoch Mol pyramid and reaches 137 feet in height. This is also the tallest temple pyramid in northern Yucatan Peninsula. This group covers an area of 2,600 square yards and was built atop a natural elevation. The word Nuhoch Mol came from the Maya Nuhoch, meaning big, and Mol, meaning mound, is comprised of 7 bodies with rounded corners and 2 stairways on the southern side. The upper temple corresponds to the post-classic period of 1100 to 1450 AD, and in the niches of the facade, one can observe a descending god. The grand platform, which is the most voluminous structure in Coba, is apparently an unfinished structure. In front of this building stands a stele, which is the best preserved of all those found in Coba to date, which is inscribed with the date November 30, 780 AD. The steps are steep and broken in places, with one support rope running up the middle. Otherwise, the climb is totally unaided. It's not a climb for the faint heart. Many visitors were trying to go up and down with the help of rope. The narrow and steep stairs only allow climbers to step up or down only sideways. Some even made it all the way to the top. When I was here in the 80s, I had climbed the pyramid. I still remember the beautiful view from the top that made the climb worth it. This time, however, I decided not to climb this crumbling structure. Too hot and too humid for me to even think about trying to climb halfway. A word of caution: if you do not want to get eaten alive by mosquitoes, bring some spray. Other than that, the ruins are amazing to look at and are different than the ruins of Chichen Itza. Mixed history, breathtaking views, archaeology and fun. This is how I would describe Coba ruins.